Hi there, I'm Keegan Millbern, and I will be showing off a procedural terrain script that I have made for Unity. The script is added on as a component to the standard Unity terrain object and adds a lot more utility, allowing for terrains like this to be made completely procedurally. There are a huge amount of options and parameters that can be fiddled with to get a plethora of interesting and cool results, and as such, I will not be going into detail about each and every one of them. The script utilizes the standard Unity terrain object settings for height maps and size, i.e. a 0 to 1 grayscale height map for altitudes determined by the standard max Unity height settings. We can start off by creating a terrain object and adding the script to it. You'll see a number of different drop-downs available. The first option is a random terrain option. This is the most basic and simplistic random option in that it will choose a random height in the range provided for each pixel. Clicking this, we get a frightening nightmarescape because currently pixels are being chosen from a 0 to a tenth of the possible height of our terrain. Kicking this value way back, we get a much nicer little noise, but still not the prettiest. Next is the load heights option. This allows you to load in a pre-existing height map and apply it to the terrain. I have both a Portland height map and an Everest height map. You can also adjust the XYZ scale to get some interesting results to either stretch or shrink your map to your liking. You'll notice it loads quite blocky and Minecrafty. This can absolutely be fixed later. But for now, we are going to click our reset terrain option at the bottom. Next, we have two options for Perlin noise, single and multiple. Under the single Perlin option, you'll see a pretty standard set of parameters for a Perlin randomized function. Fiddling with these parameters, we can get some interesting wavy patterns that can be a good basis for starting our terrain. You'll notice that every time I click the Perlin option, it will not change. This is because I have the reset terrain option on. Turning this off, you'll notice the function becomes additive. This allows for combinations of all these functions, including the height map option. Next, we have multiple Perlin, which allows you to take multiple Perlin functions and run them all at once. This allows for a much more random terrain looking effect. Next, we have the Voronoi option. This allows you to create random simplistic peaks with varying shapes, with linear, sinusoidal, or power rounding off. These peaks on their own look quite unnatural, but with the other functions can be used to create some very interesting landscapes. Next is the midpoint displacement function. This is a function that takes pixels and averages them based on a square sized region randomly. Looking at our Voronoi landscape that has very unnatural looking peaks, we can click our midpoint displacement and it will be randomized and made into much more interesting natural looking landscapes. You can adjust these values to get different appearances and different styles from the landscape as such, with much more noisiness, which sharper looking peaks, and back to softer landscapes. This could be also used with the load heights option to really start a good basis for your terrain. I'm going to skip ahead to the erosion option before going through the rest. Erosion allows you to erode your landscape in naturally simulated ways, from creating canyons or rivers, or flattening the terrain from thermal, wind, rain, or oceanic influence. The differences between these erosions can be subtle, but can really stand out when you find the right one for the look you want. Last on this list, we have a basic smooth function. This averages pixels by their direct neighbor to smooth. You can choose how many run-throughs of this function to apply at once. Going back up, we have our splat maps. These allow for textures to be applied in desired areas on the terrain via parameters chosen here. For example, if I only want grass to appear in flat areas, I can move the max angle down to 30 in order for it to not appear on steep surfaces. If I want the snow texture to only appear at the top, then I will adjust my min and max heights accordingly. The textures here are from an old Unity texture pack called Aeonic Texture Packs. As such, these are extremely low quality and noticeably tiled. That is why I have added a blend functionality on these splat maps to provide a much nicer appearance. Vegetation operates in a similar manner to the splat maps function, with parameters to place certain vegetation in their desired areas. The key things here are the number of trees and spacing. These allow you to either create denser or sparser forests. Similar parameters exist for the Details tab, although this is more for grass and small shrubbery that are billboarded rather than mesh. Finally, we are at our Water tab. This allows you to add standing water at a certain elevation in order to give your terrain much more life. This can either be fresh water or oceanic water by adding a shoreline material as such. One last little bit of functionality here is that there is a height map that can be generated for the terrain via this script. Clicking refresh here, we see a height map generated for this terrain. This can then be used later in the same script if you want, or in other programs or software. Thank you for watching. If you have any more questions or want to know more or just want to talk to me, please reach out to me via Keegan Millbern on LinkedIn or Keegan Millbern on ArtStation. Thank you.